Greetings sailors and welcome back to Naval Action. Now I haven't put up a video of this for a little while, and that's because there really hasn't been much new to show you, but I also haven't played it a whole lot since, well, just the last couple of weeks really. This is actually some older footage, and this was after they did a kind of a reset. They introduced some new ships and they forced everybody to go back down to the lower ranks to do enough damage to unlock those new ships. The ships they had already unlocked weren't lost, they didn't have to grind out everything again, but there were some of the new vessels, especially at the lower ranks, things like the the Navy Brig and the Privateer and the Snow. Was it the Snow I introduced? No, not the Snow, the Cerberus, the one after the Snow. You basically had to go through those to get to the higher level ships that you already had. So you ended up with battles like this one where everybody was tooling around in cutters and privateers basically. It was a massive light ship battle. And you'll get to see, I think I flash up at various times the actual the team list. You'll get to see there was probably 30 plus people in this. Like, there were a lot of people in this battle. There we go, you can see, yes, that's a lot of ships. I'm the only one I think that was actually in the Hjort though, and the Hjort is actually it's kind of a pre-order ship, and it's going to be, when the whole open world thing launches, it's going to be a premium vessel, and that's going to mean some quite specific things. But in terms of the PvP arena stuff, it's basically not unlike the cutter. It's got the same amount of guns, but it handles very nicely, especially when you're manoeuvring about the wind, and it also looks quite nice as well. It's a very pretty little ship. So this is going to be, I mean, everybody was just eager to do the damage to actually get back up to their bigger ships. So this is going to be a total free-for-all. Like, normally there's a kind of a structure to these battles. People try and employ certain tactics. You're trying to deny the enemy the wind. You're trying to get an advantage yourself in the wind. And then there's all the kind of the stuff, you know, depending what ship you're in and what ships you are facing at any given moment, kind of dictate what tactics you want to try and go for as well. But all of that was out the window because people just wanted to do damage, so everybody's just piling towards each other, and it's going to be a glorious free-for-all. Now, I did consider, like, I've been holding on to this footage for a while, and what I've decided to do with this video is I'm going to talk about things happening on the screen at various times as well, but I'm also going to cover some of what I've been reading about the eventual development of the open world stuff, because there have been some minor updates to the current client, but the last big one was way back when I recorded this, when all the new ships were introduced. And since then, Game Labs have been basically, I think they've done some bug squashing and they've done some optimization with what we have here, the PvP module. But they've been working steadily away on what the ultimate game will be, which is a big kind of open world adventure exploration game. Well, fighting game as well. PvP combat is going to be a major component of it. And it's actually, like, the comparison I've made previously is with Sid Meier's Pirates, but there's actually another game that I was unaware of called Pirates of the Burning Sea, and this was another multiplayer game that was launched, I can't remember the exact date now, but a few years ago, and again, very, very heavily influenced by Sid Meier's Pirates. Oh, excuse my phone. I keep thinking I've turned off my phones for doing these recordings, and then I always forget, so that's good. But basically, Pirates of the Burning Sea, it seems like it has its fans, but it also seems like it had some major issues which Game Labs are keen to avoid, specifically with how PvP combat worked in that game, and it was way too easy for people in fast, small ships to troll players in much bigger, like frigates and ships of the line, and just consistently troll them and draw them into combat and force them and to being in combat against their will, basically. And they've talked about the mechanics they want to implement to try and avoid that. That someone in a cutter or a lynx won't be able to force an HMS Victory into combat against their will. Like, there'll be an option for it, but it all seems like at the moment it's a bit. I think these are just their initial plans, and I've no doubt that with further testing there will be changes to those plans, that there will be refinements to those plans, because I don't know, like, there are various screenshots you can go and see of the open world stuff, but I don't know if anyone is actually in the open world testing yet. I don't think it's gotten that far. What they're planning to do is anyone that's unlocked the very biggest ship, the Santisima de Trinidad, they will basically get access. So there's a kind of incentive for people to grind away up to that with the PvP module, but over time anyone that is just in the current early access version of Naval Action will then get into the open world alpha. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So it's all, like, everything I've read and everything I'm going to say is probably going to be at least somewhat subject to change, but I mean, they're in a good position in that they can look at a game like Pirates of the Burning Sea and see the mistakes that made and try and avoid that. And of course, again, I'm going to keep mentioning Sid Meier's Pirates because it's a great game. I mean, I've actually played the HD remake of it myself, and it really is quite a lot of fun. But there are a lot of elements from that are they're going to be very recognisable, but I think there are also elements that are going to be recognisable from other open world games, like Elite Dangerous, like Star Citizen. Although it's hard to call Star Citizen an open world game just yet, it really isn't. Actually, Star Citizen is a lot closer in where its current state is to Naval Action right now, with the PvP only. Like, the limited number of modes available for Star Citizen is extremely similar, in fact. So Sid Meier's Pirates, if you don't know, and I suspect a lot of these same mechanics were in Pirates of the Burning Seas. Basically, I mean, there's kind of a story to it, and it's a bit inconsequential. Like, you can either pay attention to the story or not, it's up to you. But you end up in control of a ship, and at that point you are sailing around the Caribbean, and you get a choice of what to do. Now, you initially sign up with a nation, and you have the choice of either sailing around and you can privateer for that nation, or you can go full pirate. But there are other things as well, like you can actually try and follow the main story mission. You can you can just trade. You can ignore all the fighting stuff, although frankly that would be a little bit boring. And that's one of the goals of Game Labs, is to encourage people not just to the term I saw looking up POTBS was eco bear, like players that literally just trade and craft and don't ever bother with the PvP stuff. So they're keen to try and get everybody to, like, they want to make the combat engaging. And the combat in this is certainly a lot different than Sid Meier's Pirates, which was essentially very, very arcadey in how it worked. I mean, you still had to pay attention to what the wind was doing, and it still had a big effect. And there were also similar mechanics like boarding, and you had things like being able to capture enemy ports and do various other, like, you could actually, there was a land-based combat part that probably won't be in Naval Action, but it was a fun little sandbox game, basically. But it was a single-player sandbox, and what Naval Labs want to do is make a big multiplayer sandbox. And the actual the big Caribbean map that they've got, it's going to be a fair old size, and there are a lot of similarities with when you start with a new game of Sid Meier's Pirates. So you start off with a nation, and this is all just reading from their forum stuff. You know, some of this may be subject to change, as I've said, but you're going to have the option of starting with nations of various difficulty. And when I say various difficulty, it basically means the number of ports that will be available, the amount of territory that nation controls, but also the amount of AI ships that will be around, because there will be AI controlled, like, navy ships, basically. And probably traders as well, actually. I mean, they'll flesh out the world with AI ships. It won't just be purely player-based ships. So I imagine there'll be some way to tell AI ships from player ships, just as there is with Elite Dangerous. But the nations, as listed at the moment, are Spain, Britain, which are going to be the easiest because they control the most territory, the most ports. There will be France, the US, and the Dutch with a kind of a medium difficulty. So they've got fewer ports. The Dutch especially is starting off in the down in the Antilles, the southern Antilles, so you are sort of reasonably far away. And then, of course, the US, you're starting up. I think their main port is in like Florida or South Georgia, so you're way up at the top of the map. So they're a bit more like, it's not just the more limited number of ports, but it's also the fact that they're kind of out towards the fringes. So that will maybe sort of make it a little bit more difficult to play as those nations as well. And then the kind of the hardest, or the hard/impossible ones, are Denmark and Sweden. And Sweden's going to start out with like one port, and I think Denmark might have only like 2 maybe. There's also going to be a very interesting mechanic where, I mean, there's actually there's kind of a third nation group, as it were, not a specific nation, but there will also be the possibility to be a neutral player. So you will, and I don't know if you get to specifically choose a nation like, say, you know, the Ottomans or Imperial Russia, but you will be essentially out of that kind of, because the nations, if you're starting under a national flag, you're then subject to, like, if the nations are at war with each other, that's going to have an impact on how you're playing the game. So say France and Britain are at war, you know, that's highly likely to happen. In a British ship or a French ship, you will vice versa have fairly free reign to attack the ships of the opposing nation, and that's how it worked out in Sid Meier's Pirates as well. If you go just full pirate, like you can only do this once, I think, and I don't know if it's once per account or once per. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know how it's going to work exactly, but if you decide to hoist a pirate flag, your options are going to be very limited. There are going to be free ports that anyone can use, and there are also going to be specific pirate ports, but there are only going to be a couple of those. And if you're a pirate, anybody can attack you, basically. So the pirates aren't really a nation; they're just kind of a null group. They're a non-denomination almost, where if you decide to go that route, it might be quite profitable, but also conversely, anyone can attack you, including probably other pirates. But neutral nations, what they've said is that, I mean, that sounds like it's going to be quite limited if you choose to be one of a kind of a minor neutral nation. A minor in terms of presence in the Caribbean, anyway. You will not have any kind of national specific ports. It will make PvP maybe a little bit more difficult, although it sounds like you can also do things like hire your ship out as an escort, you know, do that kind of thing, make some money that way. But the option that might come off the back of being starting as a neutral is, they mentioned the possibility of creating your own national factions, like essentially kind of like clans. Now, I don't know if you're going to be tied to actual world nations at the time, but what they're talking about is if you can get together 100 other players at least, and I don't know if it's a hard cap of 100, if you're then limited to 100, or if that's just like the minimum requirement. Ships on both sides, by the way, this is quite nice when you can use both your cannons, but conversely, it means you're getting shot in both sides as well. If you get the 100 players together, if you get that minimum requirement, you will then be able to form your own nation. And aside from like the capital ports for every major nation, I don't know how it works with neutral ports or pirate ports. They might be forced to kind of, like, they might be unattackable as well, but you'll be able to take over the minor ports, at least of the major nations. And there are going to be major ports that are attackable as well, but they will be a lot tougher to take over. So it is entirely possible that you might see somebody forming up, and this is just pure speculation, as if you could actually do this, but somebody forming up as, say, let's pick a minor European nation at that time, like one of the really minor Italian nations, like I don't know, San Marino or something like that. And you get the 100 players together under the flag of San Marino, which is, I think I'm right in saying, is that one of the landlocked ones? I think it is. You might not be able to do that. This is just be purely making stuff off the top of my head. But 100 people under the flag of San Marino, and then you can go around trying to capture ports, and you can establish a position that way. So it's not entirely going to be unlike, say, World of Tanks Clan Wars, where you're also vying for territory. It's not just going to be individual players sailing around this open world, fighting each other and trading and crafting and exploring, because there's going to be some of that as well. But also there's going to be this more kind of global level of mechanics going on, and that is going to be quite interesting, because again, this was a thing you could do in Sid Meier's Pirates. That's where the land-based combat came along. If you had a big enough crew, you could basically land your crew, you could attack ports, and if you were fighting for a particular flag, what you could do is you could capture ports for your kind of friendly nation, as it were. Although I think if you were a pirate, you could just capture them and make them a pirate port and do it that way. But the ability to essentially create whole new national factions within the game and, you know, try and bring them to prominence, that's almost more like the single player of Mount & Blade Warband, where it is entirely possible. Like, you start off under the auspices of one of the various nations that exist on the map, but you have the option, if you amass yourself a big enough army in Mount & Blade Warband, what you can do is you can find a town or a castle, or if you're feeling really brave, you can go after somebody's capital city, but you basically attack it and you siege it, and if you manage to successfully take it, you have the option of either saying, well, I'm going to claim this for... Like, you can be fighting under the banner of somebody, you can claim it for one of the nations. Or you can set yourself up as an independent nation. And it's an interesting route you can take in Warband, but it's very, very tough to do, because the person that you took the castle or whatever off immediately does not like you very much, and the people that you were formerly associated with are not too pleased with you either. So basically everybody ends up hating you. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of effect it has, because at the very least, if you are attacking, let's say you take a port off France, France is immediately then going to be hostile to you, and they will have an established AI navy around, and it's going to make life interesting. And that, again, pure speculation, but it might be that if you get to a certain point that you then get your own AI naval ships popping up. So it's all, like, there's a lot of interesting things going on with this game, and a lot of it is, as I've said, quite familiar in some ways from Sid Meier's Pirates, but a lot of it is, I think, influenced by other games as well. So I'm actually, like, I'm really interested to see how this comes along, because at the moment it is not unlike, it's just World of Tanks, it's PvP combat but with ships, but it's going to be a very, very different kind of a game once it goes into, you know, it's going to be an MMO basically. That's what they're aiming to create here. So they want to make an MMO that is avoiding the pitfalls of Pirates of the Burning Seas, and it also has the added advantage of it looks a hell of a lot better than Pirates of the Burning Seas as well. Like, really, like the footage I've seen of Pirates of the Burning Seas, it's only barely just a step up from the remake of Sid Meier's Pirates. And, well, you can see for yourself how good this game looks. It really is a very nice looking game indeed. So, some of the other stuff I haven't mentioned so far, I briefly, well, I kind of touched on that there will be crafting and resources. You will be able to build your own ships, and some of the best ships that you will be able to make in the game will be ships that you've crafted yourself, and some of that involves exploration, and some of it involves, like, you might want to buy stuff, you might just want to go down that route, or you might try and steal it from other people. I suppose that will also be a route that you can take. But essentially you will be trying to discover resources around this open world map, and they're going to do it a little bit like I think it was Civ 3, where you had certain resources that could run out essentially. Like oil was one of the big ones. You could have an oil resource pop up on the map, and there would always be a certain number of oil resources on the map. So if you had an oil resource in your territory and it then depleted, it would then pop up somewhere else. So what's going to happen is that, let's say you discover a deposit of iron or something like that, and however it works, they're not specifically clear, but you need to somehow work that iron deposit, and once that is then worked out, another one will pop up somewhere randomly on the map, and at that point it's anyone's, whoever then discovers that first will then presumably get dibs on it. So that kind of resource exploration is also going to be a way to make money, but also to gather materials to make your own ships, to improve your own ships, because you'll be able to improve ships as well. Premium ships like this one, it's a little bit more unclear, because what they're talking about with regular ships is that, as with, say, EVE Online, you can fully lose a ship that you've bought or built, or even captured. Capturing ships is another option, although captured ships are apparently going to be never as good as ones that you've crafted or bought yourself. But what they're going to have with premium ships is, instead of the limited durability levels of a regular ship, it is going to be essentially unsinkable. Now, it can still run out of durability, but what happens at that point, whereas with a regular ship, you get kind of 5 levels of durability, and once that runs out, your ship sinks. And you can go back and repair. You can repair those levels of durability. So you have to be doing sort of at least 2 hours continuous battles is what they're saying in the forums. That they've determined that's about the level. If you're just battling continuously for 2 hours and your ship's getting just damaged over and over and over, at that point you probably will be at the stage of losing a ship. But a premium ship, once it runs out of that durability, it will be reduced to a state where it's kind of essentially unusable, but you can then repair it. You don't actually fully lose the ship, and it's going to be expensive to repair it, but it's also going to be quite probably less expensive than buying a whole new ship. It's unclear what happens when you capture a premium ship off somebody, though, whether it just becomes because you can't lose a premium ship, and there's been a bunch of questions about this on the forums that I think this is probably one of the mechanics where they're still kind of figuring out the details, but you will be able to capture somebody's premium ship, but the person with the premium ship won't lose it, and it's not entirely clear how that's going to work yet. Like, maybe you just get an inferior copy, in which case you're essentially cloning somebody's ship. But on the other hand, that then might be open to abuse by people. Like, all these things, one of the things they've got to think about, which must be tremendously fun, is how can people abuse this, and how can we try and prevent that from happening? And as hard as you try, there will always be something that somebody will figure out somehow to abuse the heck out of, but that's just the nature of online games generally. So there are also another couple of things that I haven't really touched on. One of them is that, I've talked about nations, but if you don't want to go down the full-blown route of creating a whole new nation to vie for control of the map, there are also going to be guilds, and it's not entirely clear how guilds will work exactly, but that's going to be a lot closer to something like the World of Tanks clan system, or clan systems in any kind of MMO. So that's actually interesting that there's going to be kind of 2 tiers of it. You can go absolutely full bore and try and be really organised and kind of CW, Clan Wars level organisation, and try and establish Bromania as a major Caribbean power, for example. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. Bromania, that'd be perfect. But you can, maybe on let's say a more casual level, you can join a guild and do the more kind of usual guildy stuff. So you would support each other in training, or you would go and look for fights, or hunt pirates, or... Yeah, it also mentions being able to found your own ports. that could be an interesting mechanic as well. So maybe you club together materials and money, and you found your own ports in various places of the map, and you could get control that way. But also, of course, at that point you've got to defend them against other people, other guilds, other nations trying to take them over. So that again, an interesting mechanic, but guild-owned ports might operate on a different level than nation-owned ports, so it might not quite be like that. Like, this is a lot of speculation on my part. The other thing I want to mention is that apparently it's not just going to be people fighting each other in the open world. They are actually going to instance the battles and do it that way. And there are a couple of things that they mention. Now, I've said already that they're going to basically try and prevent people from griefing in. Let's say I'm in a very nippy, fast little yacht like this, and they're gonna prevent people from trapping bigger ships in fights with smaller, faster ships that they basically can't outrun, which is a good thing. I think the exact mechanics of that maybe need a little bit of polish, because it might be interesting to let's say you get a group of in a guild or from a nation or whatever, you're together with a group of friends in smaller ships, and you decide you're going to try and tackle a bigger ship. But you'd have to, like, I think there's essentially going to have to be some kind of battle rating system in place to, like, they're going to have to figure out some rules to that, for that to make sure that things are not too unfair, but that there's an element of, well, you can group together with smaller ships to try and tackle a bigger ship. Like, there should be some element of that, but you want to make it not totally open to abuse, if you see what I mean. So that's going to be interesting. But NPCs will also be, like, if you don't particularly want to always be going around doing PvP stuff, if you want to, for instance, concentrate more on trading and exploring, what you can do as an option is, if you're, it depends on the nation you're playing, obviously, the amount of area that they control, the amount of friendly NPC ships that there will be around, but you can stick to those areas where there are friendly NPC ships, and if somebody attacks you in those areas, those friendly NPC ships will then be in that battle instance with you. So even if you aren't particularly feeling up for combat, or you're not particularly wanting to go around fighting all the things, you have that option. You have that option of sticking to those safer waters and sticking near the friendly AI support. And let's say somebody, like, you're in a relatively small ship like a Snow or a Brig or whatever, and somebody jumps you in a Cerberus, but then suddenly there's a friendly AI HMS Surprise in the fight with you as well. So that Cerberus would suddenly not be feeling quite so confident. So they're going to put various mechanics like that in to give people options. So anyway, we've run out of battle just about. I'm going to cut off the final couple of minutes of this, because it's basically trying to sail towards the last few remaining ships. It was happening off in the distance, so there wasn't any chance of me catching up before they all died, but we ended up winning that battle. It was quite nice. I did a bit of damage, and you actually, to get the Santissima de Trinidad, the yacht, you don't have to play the yacht to get anything but the Santissima de Trinidad. You kind of play all the ships in sequence, and then once you get to the Santinima de Trinidad, I can't even say it, Trinidad, that one, Santinima de Trinidad, that ship, you then realise that you have to play the yacht a certain amount to get damage in that as well, to get that final unlock, which is, yeah, so there is a point to playing the yacht. It's not just that it looks pretty. So, Naval Action, I am kind of, like, I'm really interested to see how it works out. I don't play a lot of multiplayer MMOs that aren't just straight up PvP, that aren't just like World of Tanks or War Thunder, where you're just in an arena, you're just fighting other people, and that's all the game is. I'm kind of struggling to, like, I've poked a little bit at Elite Dangerous, and hopefully it's not going to be like Elite Dangerous, where I like the idea of it, but I just can't then quite get to grips with the actual gameplay. But we'll see how it works out. It might grip me in a different way, because the actual, like, combat is a major component of these games, and the combat in Naval Action I enjoy a lot more than I do in Elite Dangerous. That's already a big plus in the favour of naval action. So I might well end up sticking with this game a lot longer, and you might well end up seeing more naval action videos in the future where I am sailing around and being a pirate or fighting for Romania. That would be so awesome, though. Romania. If you could do custom nations. Oh, we can only dream. So, anyway, yeah, this was more of a roundup of the open world plans than me actually talking about the battle, but it was a fun battle nonetheless. And if you enjoyed watching it, if you enjoyed me blethering on about what naval action hopes to be, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.